Hello and welcome to the NSA Codebreaker Challenge for 2020. My name is Jacob Elliott from the University of North Georgia, and I will be guiding you through some of my solutions for the tasks for this year's challenge. This first video is going to focus on tasks 1 through 3. Since these can be completed rather quickly, we can just boil this down to one short video. If you're unfamiliar with the actual scenario of this challenge, a notable journalist has been kidnapped by some sort of terrorist organization, and it's our job to basically track down where they took the journalist and recover them somehow. And so the first task is doing a little bit of recon to figure out a little bit about them and find out how we can attempt to locate them. We're provided a file home.zip, and we can go ahead and get that downloaded now. When we extract it, we can see that there's a folder inside it called Home. And then inside of that, there's another folder with a username. Now, the first task that we need to complete is finding out the journalist's username on their computer. If we click into this folder, we can see that it matches the file structure of a user's home folder on a Linux operating system. And so the answer to this question is simply going to be the name of that folder inside the home folder. In my case, Frankie Craft 687. And then inside of that folder, we're asked for the name of an encrypted file that exists. In my case, the file is simply called credentials, so we can go ahead and submit that and complete the first challenge. Next, we need to find a way to actually decrypt the encrypted file, and you can see that the title of this task is social engineering, and so we need to actually look through some of the files for the journalist to see if we can find hints to determine the password to decrypt the file. The first thing that's really obvious here is we see a file called pwhints.txt, and it has a number of different accounts that are owned by the journalist and hints to what their passwords are. The one that we care about is the keychain, which says pet name plus pet b-day. So let's go ahead and dig into some of this user's files and see if we can find out any information we can to fill in those blanks. If we look at the images, we can see that the journalist has a cat. And one of the images is a very obvious happy birthday image for that cat. So perhaps when that image was created can help to inform us about what the cat's birthday is. Next, we can look at these blog entries and see if we can find some more information about the cat. When we look at bloginfo.txt, we can see the intro to their blog, and it includes the cat's name, Lucy. Now, this will be different for every participant in this challenge, but I can go ahead and fill in the cat's name that's Lucy. Now, as I mentioned before, now I need to figure out when that birthday image was created. This will be different from simply looking at the timestamp on the file. Instead, we want to actually look at the EXIF data that will tell us a little bit more detailed information about this image. And this is info that's actually embedded in the image rather than just in the file system. We can actually use the EXIF function on my Linux command line in shenanigans.jpg, and it gives us the information that's embedded in the image, including the original creation date. In my case, 7/24/2019. Now I can go back to my credentials here, and I'll go ahead and put in 0724, which is the format that's used for this password. So next up, we need to actually try to decrypt this file. We can do that by using the GPG program. If you run man GPG, then you can see some information about this program and how it can be used to do things like generating encryption keys, or in our case, we want to decrypt a file. So let's go ahead and run the GPG command on the credentials file. And it'll give us an opportunity to put in a password. So we'll go ahead and put in Lucy0724. And it prints the output directly to the standard output. A first look at this kind of indicates that it's going to probably be an SQLite database. So we'll go ahead and pipe that output to credentials.sqlite. And now that we've decrypted the file, we can go ahead and open it with the database browser. And we can see that indeed this is a SQLite file containing credentials for this journalist. It appears that in the passwords table, there are a number of passwords for different services. And then in the services table, we can see a service ID that corresponds to each of them. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we can go ahead and enter Lucy0724 for the password for task 2 that decrypts the file successfully. Finally, we can go on to task 3, which uses the same file, and now we want to determine the username and password for their Stepinator account, which is a wearable fitness device that tracks the number of steps that they walked. Hopefully this will allow us in the future tasks to be able to determine where this journalist went. So if we look at this, we can see in the services table there is a Stepinator account, which is ID 8 in the services table. Going to the passwords table, we can see service 8, and we can see the username is lucycraft0724, and then this strange encrypted password. Now, you can look at this and tell that it's not something simple like base 64 or any common encoding. Instead, this is actually base 85. If you pull it up something like CyberChef, then you can go ahead and paste in this input and simply select the base 85 decoder from the data format. When we add from base 85, we can see it successfully decodes it to this password. Now we have the username and password that correspond to the Stepinator account for the kidnapped journalist, which is the answer for task 3. So we can go ahead and put that in now. And now we're finished with task 3, and we'll be able to move on with the challenge.